They say love makes you blind, but I never thought it would make me stupid too. My name is Jack. I'm 53 years old, and this is the story of how I lost almost everything chasing a dream in Thailand. Some people will judge me for what I'm about to tell you, and honestly, I judge myself too. But maybe my mistakes can save someone else from making the same ones. Maybe that's the only good thing that can come from all of this. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It helps more than you know, and I love hearing from people all over the world. I'm a civil engineer from Canada. Spent 30 years designing bridges and highways, saving every dollar I could, dreaming of the day I could finally walk away from the cold winters and the endless grind. I'd been to Thailand twice before, just short trips, but something about that country grabbed hold of me and wouldn't let go. It wasn't the obvious stuff that attracts most Western men. I'm not into the party scene, never was. I don't drink heavily. I just loved the warmth, the food, the way life moved at a different pace. Everything felt lighter there, like the weight I'd been carrying my whole life just melted away the moment I stepped off the plane. My plan was simple: work until 55, retire with a decent pension and savings, then move to Thailand permanently. I had it all calculated down to the last dollar. No wife, no kids, nobody depending on me. My parents had passed years ago, and I'd been alone so long I'd gotten comfortable with it. Or maybe I just convinced myself I was comfortable. Either way, Thailand felt like the fresh start I didn't even know I was looking for. In March of 2023, I decided to go back for what I thought would be my last big vacation before retirement. I wanted to experience the Loy Krathong festival in Chiang Mai. I'd seen pictures online of thousands of lanterns floating into the night sky, and something about that image just spoke to me. It felt symbolic somehow, like letting go of the past and watching it drift away into the darkness. I booked 6 weeks off work, packed my bags, and headed back to the land of smiles. The first 2 weeks were exactly what I needed. I stayed in a quiet guest house near the old city in Chiang Mai, spent my days wandering through temples, eating khao soi from street vendors, and just breathing in the slower pace of life. I'd sit in coffee shops for hours with a book, watching monks walk by in their orange robes, listening to the sounds of the city. It was perfect, peaceful, everything I'd been dreaming about. Then I met Lek. I know what you're thinking. Another old foreigner falls for a young Thai woman, tale as old as time. But it wasn't like that. At least I didn't think it was like that at the time. Lek worked at a small art gallery near the night bazaar. She was 38, not some 20-year-old bar girl. She wore glasses, kept her hair tied back in a simple ponytail, dressed conservatively. She had this quiet intelligence about her that I found fascinating. When I walked into her gallery one afternoon, she was sitting behind the desk reading a book on Buddhist philosophy. In English. We started talking. She told me about the paintings on the walls, all created by local artists she represented. She spoke beautiful English, better than mine sometimes, with this gentle way of explaining things that made me want to keep listening. I ended up buying a small painting that day, not because I particularly loved it, but because I wanted an excuse to stay and talk to her longer. Before I left, I asked if she'd like to have dinner sometime. She smiled and said yes. That first dinner turned into a second, then a third. We'd meet after she closed the gallery, find small restaurants away from the tourist areas, and just talk for hours. She told me about growing up in a village outside Chiang Mai, about moving to the city to study art, about her dreams of opening her own gallery one day. She asked about my life too, actually seemed interested in the boring details of bridge design and Canadian winters. She laughed at my jokes, listened when I talked, and never once asked me for anything. By the time the Loy Krathong festival came around, we'd been seeing each other for nearly 3 weeks. We released our lanterns together that night, standing on the banks of the Ping River, surrounded by thousands of other people doing the same thing. The sky filled with floating lights, and when I turned to look at Lek, her face glowing in the orange warmth of all those lanterns, something in my chest tightened. I realized I'd been alone for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to want to be close to someone. I'd forgotten what it felt like to matter to another person. We spent my last week together almost constantly. She took time off from the gallery, and we traveled to Pai, spent nights in a little bungalow in the mountains, watched sunsets that painted the sky in colors I didn't have names for. She told me about her family during those quiet evenings. Her mother had died 5 years earlier from cancer. Her father, 68 years old, was living with her younger sister in their home village. He had diabetes and heart problems, struggling to afford his medications on the small pension he received from his years working in the rice fields. Lex sent money home every month to help, but it was never quite enough. I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? She had pictures on her phone. Her father looking frail and thin, sitting on the porch of a traditional Thai house. Her sister looking tired and overwhelmed, standing beside him. Lex showed me the bank transfer receipts, where she sent 5,000 baht here, 7,000 there. Everything checked out. Everything made sense. When it came time for me to fly back to Canada, we both cried at the airport. Real tears, not the kind you fake for dramatic effect. She held my hand and told me she'd never felt this way about anyone before. She said she'd wait for me, that she wanted me to come back, that maybe we could build a life together. I told her I'd be back in 6 months. I told her I loved her. And I meant it. Those 6 months back in Canada were the longest of my life. Lek and I talked every single day online. Good morning messages, photos of her day, long voice notes where she'd tell me about the gallery or her father's health or how much she missed me. I'd send her pictures of snow, make jokes about how I couldn't wait to leave the cold behind, count down the days until I could see her again. Everything felt right. Everything felt real. About 3 months into our long-distance relationship, Lek messaged me one evening. Her father had fallen and broken his hip. He needed surgery, but the government hospital had a 3-month waiting list. The private hospital could do it immediately, but the cost was steep. 80,000 baht, about 3,000 Canadian dollars. She was apologetic when she asked, almost embarrassed. She said she understood if I couldn't help, that she'd figure something out, maybe borrow from friends. But she was scared her father wouldn't survive 3 more months without the surgery. I didn't even hesitate. I sent the money the next day. Lek was grateful, sent me photos from the hospital, showed me the paperwork, kept me updated on her father's recovery. 2 weeks later, she sent me a video call showing her father walking with a walker, smiling weakly at the camera, thanking me in broken English. I felt good about helping. I felt like I was part of something, part of a family. It felt right. I flew back to Thailand in September. The plan was to stay for 3 months this time, really test out retirement life, figure out where Lek and I might settle down together. She picked me up from the airport in Chiang Mai, and the moment I saw her waiting for me outside arrivals, I knew I'd made the right choice. We fell back into our rhythm immediately, like no time had passed at all. For the first month, everything was perfect. We looked at condos together, talked about the future, made plans. She took me to her village to meet her father and sister. The village was exactly as she'd described it. Rural, quiet, beautiful in its simplicity. Her father's house was small, traditional, built on stilts. Her father was there, still recovering from his hip surgery, moving slowly but moving. He thanked me again, grabbed my hand with both of his, tears in his eyes. Her sister cooked us an incredible meal, and we sat on the floor eating and laughing despite the language barrier. I felt welcomed. I felt like I belonged. Lek suggested we get married. Not right away, but soon. She said if we were serious about building a life together, it would make everything easier. Visas, property ownership, all the practical things. And honestly, I wanted to marry her. I'd never felt this way about anyone. Never thought I'd be the type to settle down, but everything with Lek felt natural. So 2 months after I arrived, we had a small ceremony in her village. Traditional Thai wedding, just family and a few close friends. I paid for everything, about 500,000 baht altogether. The ceremony, the food, the gifts for her family. It felt like the happiest day of my life. We decided to rent a house in Chiang Mai for a year, something bigger than my old guest house room, a real home where we could start our married life. Lek said she'd keep working at the gallery, and I'd figure out my days, maybe volunteer, maybe take up a hobby, just enjoy retirement. We found a nice place in the Sansai district, 3 bedrooms, a small garden, good neighbors. The rent was 20,000 baht a month, nothing by Canadian standards. I paid 6 months up front. Life settled into a comfortable routine. Lek would leave for work each morning, and I'd spend my days reading, taking long walks, exploring the city at my own pace. Some days I'd meet her for lunch, surprise her at the gallery with takeout somtam and sticky rice. Other days I'd ride my scooter out to the countryside, find a waterfall or a quiet temple. Just exist without any pressure or schedule. It was exactly what I'd dreamed retirement would be. But then the money requests started coming more frequently. First, it was her father again. His medications had increased. The doctor said he needed regular checkups, unexpected costs that kept popping up. 5,000 baht here, 10,000 there. Then her sister's daughter, Lek's niece, needed money for school uniforms and books, 20,000 baht. Then the house in the village needed repairs. The roof was leaking, 15,000 baht. Each request came with explanations, with apologies, with promises that this would be the last time. And each time I believed her. Each time I sent the money. I didn't mind helping at first. That's what family does, right? They help each other. And I had money saved. I wasn't hurting for cash. What's a few $1,000s when you're trying to build a life with someone? But 6 months in, I started to notice the requests were getting bigger and more frequent. 30,000 baht for her father's dental work. 50,000 baht because her sister's husband lost his job and they were behind on bills. 40,000 baht for a new water pump at the village house. Every couple of weeks something new came up. I never saw most of these things in person. Lek would show me photos, receipts, bank transfers. Everything looked legitimate. Her sister would video call sometimes, looking stressed, thanking me for helping, promising they'd pay me back one day. Her father would wave at the camera, smiling weakly. It all seemed real, but I started to notice something strange. Every time I suggested visiting the village to see her father or help with whatever the latest emergency was, Lek would have a reason why that weekend didn't work. He was tired, he wasn't feeling well, he didn't want me to see him in bad condition. It was always something. After about a year of marriage, I'd sent roughly $60,000 to help Lek's family. $60,000 in 12 months. When I saw that number written out in my banking app, my stomach dropped. That was a huge chunk of my retirement savings, money I'd spent decades accumulating. And what did I have to show for it? Receipts and thank you messages. I started to feel uneasy, this little voice in the back of my head asking questions I didn't want to answer. Around the 14-month mark, Lek came to me with tears in her eyes. Her father needed another surgery. This time it was his heart. Bypass surgery. The cost at the private hospital was 350,000 baht. About 13,000 Canadian dollars. She was sobbing when she told me, said she was sorry, said she knew she'd been asking too much already, but this was life or death. Without this surgery, her father would die. She showed me the doctor's report, all in Thai, official looking with stamps and signatures. She showed me the quote from the hospital. Everything looked real, but I hesitated. For the first time since I'd met her, I actually hesitated. $13,000 was a lot of money. Even for me, even for someone I loved. I told Lek I needed to think about it, that I needed to see the paperwork more carefully, maybe talk to the doctor myself. She got defensive immediately, asked if I didn't trust her, if I didn't care about her father, if I was going to let him die over money. We fought that night, the first real fight we'd ever had. She slept in the spare bedroom, wouldn't talk to me the next morning before she left for work. I spent that day thinking, really thinking, about all the money I'd sent over the past year, about how I'd never actually verified any of it, beyond the documents Lek showed me, about how convenient it was that every emergency required immediate cash with no time to investigate properly. I started to feel sick. That little voice in my head was screaming now, telling me to wake up, to look at what was actually happening, but I didn't want to believe it. I loved Lek. We were married. She wouldn't do this to me. That evening, I told Lek I'd pay for the surgery, but I wanted to go to the hospital with her and her father. I wanted to meet the doctor, see the facility, understand the procedure. If I was paying $13,000, I at least wanted to know exactly what that money was going towards. She agreed, seemed relieved, hugged me tight, and thanked me over and over. We planned to drive to the village that weekend, pick up her father, and take him to the hospital on Monday. Friday came. I was packing a bag for the weekend trip when Lek came home from work early. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her phone, not making eye contact. She sat down on the couch and told me we couldn't go to the village this weekend. Her sister had called, said their father wasn't feeling well enough for the trip, that we should wait another week. But the surgery was supposedly urgent, remember? Life or death. That's what she'd said 3 days earlier. Now suddenly we could wait another week. Something snapped inside me. All the doubts, all the questions I'd been pushing down for months, they all came flooding to the surface at once. I sat down across from Lek and asked her directly, "Is your father really sick? Does he really need this surgery? Have any of these emergencies over the past year been real?" She couldn't look at me. She stared at her hands, tears starting to fall, but she wouldn't answer. I asked again, more firmly this time. "Lek, tell me the truth. Right now, what's going on?" That's when everything fell apart. She admitted it. Not all at once, but piece by piece, like pulling teeth. Her father was sick, that part was true. He did have diabetes and heart problems, but he'd never had hip surgery. He'd never needed dental work. There was no bypass surgery scheduled. Most of the emergencies over the past year had been exaggerated or completely fabricated. The money I'd sent hadn't gone to medical bills or school fees or house repairs. It had gone to pay off gambling debts. Not her gambling debts. Her ex-boyfriend's gambling debts. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Just sat there staring at her while she cried and apologized. She told me her ex, a man named Somchai, had gotten involved with underground gambling in Chiang Mai. He'd lost big, owed money to dangerous people who'd threatened his life. They'd broken up 2 years earlier, but he'd come back into her life around the same time I came back to Thailand. He'd begged her for help, said if she didn't help him pay off his debts, they'd kill him. And for some reason I still don't understand, she'd decided to help him by scamming me. Every time she said her father needed surgery or her sister needed money, she'd been sending it to Somchai. He'd pay off a portion of his debt, but then he'd gamble again, lose again, need more money. It was a cycle that had been going on for over a year, and I'd been funding it without even knowing. All those receipts she'd shown me. Fake the hospital paperwork? Fake. Even some of the video calls she'd coached her sister and father on what to say, promised to send them money if they played along. The worst part was learning that she'd never actually broken up with Somchai. They'd been seeing each other the entire time I'd been with her. Every time she said she was working late at the gallery, she was with him. Every weekend trip she said she was visiting her family, she was with him. Our entire relationship, our marriage, all of it had been a lie from the start. She'd seen me as an easy mark, a lonely foreign man with money, someone she could manipulate and drain until there was nothing left. I asked her how much. How much of my money had actually gone to her family, and how much had gone to Somchai. She wouldn't tell me at first, but I kept pushing. Finally, she admitted that out of the $60,000 I'd sent, maybe $10,000 had actually gone to her father for legitimate medical expenses. The other $50,000 had gone straight to Somchai's gambling debts and their shared lifestyle. $50,000 gone, wasted, stolen. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I just felt empty, hollow, like everything I'd believed about my life for the past year and a half had been ripped away, leaving nothing behind. I asked her to leave. She begged me not to end things, said she'd made a mistake, said she really did love me, that the feelings were real even if the circumstances weren't. But how could I believe anything she said? Every word out of her mouth was poison now. Every memory we'd shared was tainted. Our wedding day, those lanterns floating into the sky, all those quiet evenings talking about our future, it had all been a lie. She finally left that night, went to stay with a friend. I sat alone in our rented house, surrounded by the furniture we'd picked out together. The pictures on the walls from our trips, all these reminders of a life that had never actually existed. I'd spent $60,000, given up my carefully planned retirement timeline, moved halfway across the world, and for what? To be played like an absolute fool by someone I thought loved me. The next morning I started making decisions. First, I went to the bank and made sure Lek couldn't access any of my accounts. Then I went to a lawyer and started divorce proceedings. Thai divorce law is complicated, especially when foreigners are involved, but my lawyer assured me we could expedite things since we'd only been married a short time and had no shared assets or children. The house was rented under my name only, so I gave the landlord notice that I'd be leaving at the end of the paid rental period. I wasn't going to give her another single baht. Then I had to make the biggest decision. Do I go back to Canada? Do I let this experience destroy everything I'd planned for my retirement? Or do I stay in Thailand and try to salvage something from this disaster? I thought about it for days. Thailand hadn't betrayed me. Lek had betrayed me. This country was still beautiful, still peaceful, still the place I'd fallen in love with long before I ever met her. And if I left now, if I ran back to Canada with my tail between my legs, then she'd win. She'd not only taken my money, she'd taken my dream too. I couldn't let that happen. So I made the decision to stay. I moved to Bangkok, figured a fresh start in a new city might help. I found a small condo in the Sukhumvit area, nothing fancy but comfortable. The rent was higher than Chiang Mai, but I liked being in the middle of everything, having the BTS nearby, being able to walk to restaurants and shops. The anonymity of a big city felt good after everything that had happened. The divorce went through faster than I expected. Lek didn't contest anything, probably felt too guilty to fight me on it. Or maybe she was just ready to move on to her next victim. Either way, 3 months after I'd discovered the truth, I was officially single again. Free from her, but also free from $50,000 and a huge chunk of my trust in people. I've been in Bangkok for 8 months now. I'm not going to lie and say everything is perfect, that I've completely healed and moved on. I haven't. Some days I wake up angry, replaying every moment of our relationship in my head, seeing all the red flags I'd ignored, kicking myself for being so stupid. Other days I just feel sad. Sad that something I thought was real turned out to be fake. Sad that I wasted 1.5 years of my life with someone who saw me as nothing more than a bank account. But I'm surviving. I've made a few friends here, both expats and Thais. Good people who've shown me that Lek doesn't represent everyone in this country. I joined a photography club, started taking Thai language lessons, volunteer at an animal shelter twice a week. I'm rebuilding a life here, just a different one than I'd imagined. I haven't dated anyone since Lek. I've had opportunities, met women who seemed interested, but I'm not ready. The trust isn't there yet. Maybe it never will be. Maybe that's the real cost of what she did to me. Not the money, but the ability to believe in someone again. That's what hurts the most when I really think about it. She didn't just steal my savings. She stole my faith in love, in partnership, in the idea that someone could want me for me and not just what I could provide. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Lek is still in Chiang Mai, still with Somchai. Apparently, they used my money to pay off enough of his debts that the dangerous people left them alone. Last I heard, they were talking about getting married. I hope he makes her as miserable as she made me. That's petty, I know, but I'm still human. I'm still hurt. The lawyer managed to confirm some things for me during the divorce proceedings. The art gallery where Lek supposedly worked. She'd quit that job 6 months before I met her. Every day she told me she was going to work. She was actually just wandering around the city or meeting Somchai. Even that first day I walked into the gallery and met her. She'd been filling in for a friend as a favor. Our entire meeting had been chance, but once she realized I was a retired foreigner with money, she'd seen an opportunity and taken it. Everything after that first day had been calculated. Looking back, there were signs. So many signs. The way she'd always insist on handling any interactions with her family, never letting me speak directly to her father or sister without her translating or being present. The way every emergency required immediate cash, always just under the amount where I'd really start asking hard questions. The way she'd get defensive or emotional whenever I suggested visiting her village spontaneously. The way she'd never introduce me to her friends or co-workers from the gallery. The way she'd keep her phone face down on the table, take calls in the other room, clear her message notifications immediately. I saw all of it. I just chose not to see it. That's the hardest truth to swallow. I wasn't a helpless victim. I was a willing participant in my own deception because I wanted so badly to believe that someone could love me, that I could have this beautiful life I'd dreamed about, that all my years of lonely savings and planning were leading somewhere meaningful. I let myself be blind because the alternative, admitting that I was alone and would probably stay alone, felt worse than the doubt. So what's the lesson here? What's the wisdom I'm supposed to share after throwing away $50,000 and 18 months of my life? I don't know if I have any grand insights. Don't trust people too quickly, I guess. Don't let loneliness make your decisions for you. Don't ignore red flags just because you want something to be true. All the obvious stuff that everyone already knows, but nobody actually follows when they're in the moment. But here's what I do know. Thailand is still beautiful. This country didn't betray me, one person did. And while that distinction doesn't give me my money back or erase the pain, it does let me stay here without feeling like an idiot. I can sit in a coffee shop in Bangkok, watch the chaos of the street outside, eat pad krapao that's so spicy my eyes water, and feel at peace. Not happy exactly, not yet, but at peace. That's something. I'm 54 now. I've got maybe 25 or 30 years left if I'm lucky. So I've still got enough money saved to live comfortably here. Not extravagantly, but comfortably. I can afford my condo, my meals, my hobbies, the occasional trip to the islands. It's not the retirement I planned with Lek, but it's a retirement. It's my retirement. Nobody can take that away from me unless I let them. Will I ever trust someone enough to try again? I don't know. Right now the answer is no. The scar tissue is still too fresh, the wound still too raw. But maybe one day, with enough time and healing, I'll be ready to take that risk again. Maybe I'll meet someone genuine, someone who wants me for me and not for what I can provide. Or maybe I won't, and I'll live out my days as a solitary expat, eating street food and taking photographs and volunteering with stray dogs. Either way, I'll be okay. The thing about rock bottom is that it's solid. You can't fall any further, which means the only direction left is up. I'm building from here, slowly, carefully, with walls much higher and thicker than before. But I'm building. That's what matters. If you're watching this and thinking about moving to Thailand, about meeting someone here, about starting a new life in paradise, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. This country is incredible. The people, the culture, the food, the beauty of it all, it's real. But go in with your eyes open. Take your time. Don't rush into things because you're lonely or because someone makes you feel special. And for the love of God, if someone starts asking you for money on a regular basis, run. Just run. Nothing good is waiting for you at the end of that road. I learned my lesson the expensive way. Maybe you can learn from my mistakes for free. As for Lek, I hope she's happy. I really do. I hope whatever she got from me was worth destroying someone who genuinely cared about her. I hope Somchai treats her better than she treated me, though I doubt it. I hope they build a life together with my money and that it brings them everything they deserve. And I hope one day when I think about her, I feel nothing at all. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just nothing. I'm not there yet, but I will be. For now, I'm just a 54-year-old man living in Bangkok, taking it one day at a time, rebuilding what was broken. I've got my health, my independence, and a second chance to do retirement right. That's more than a lot of people get, so I'll take it. I'll take it and be grateful. Thailand isn't a fairy tale. It's a real place with real people, some good and some bad, just like anywhere else. I came here looking for paradise and found out that paradise doesn't exist, not the way I imagined it. But maybe that's okay. Maybe reality, messy and complicated and imperfect as it is enough. It has to be, because it's all we've got. I still sit on balconies with a beer, watching the street below just like I did on my first trip here all those years ago. The difference now is I understand what I'm looking at. I see the complexity, the hustle, the survival. I see people trying to make it through another day in a world that doesn't make it easy. I see myself in that struggle, just another person trying to figure it all out. And you know what? That's okay. That's human. That's life. I lost $50,000 and a year and a half of my life to someone who never really loved me. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm still moving forward. And in the end, that's the only revenge I need. Just being okay despite everything she did to destroy me. So here's to second chances. Here's to learning the hard way. Here's to staying when it would be easier to run. Here's to Bangkok sunsets and street food and stray dogs and starting over at 54. Here's to all of us who came to Thailand looking for something and found something completely different. Here's to surviving. The months after that revelation were some of the strangest of my life. I stayed in that house in Sansai for 3 more weeks, sleeping in the spare bedroom, barely eating, just trying to process what had happened. Lek had moved out completely, taking only her clothes and personal items. Everything else remained, like a museum dedicated to our fake life together. The coffee maker we'd bought at Central Festival, the throw pillows she'd picked out for the couch, the wedding photos on the wall, both of us smiling like we'd won the lottery. I couldn't look at them without feeling sick. My friends back in Canada tried to be supportive when I finally told them what happened, but I could hear the judgment in their voices. How could you be so stupid, Jack? How did you not see this coming? Everyone knows about Thai women scamming foreign men. It's like the oldest story in the book. And they were right. It was stupid. I had been stupid. But knowing that didn't make it hurt any less. The lawyer I hired was a middle-aged Thai woman named Kun Nataya. She had kind eyes but spoke bluntly, which I appreciated. She told me I was lucky in some ways. Because Lek and I had no children, no jointly owned property, and I could prove the house was solely in my name with me paying all the bills, the divorce should be straightforward. She also told me I was unlucky in other ways. Getting back any of the money I'd given Lek would be nearly impossible. I'd sent it willingly, no matter what lies she'd told me to get it. In the eyes of Thai law, gifts to family members couldn't be recovered, unless I could prove she'd committed fraud with forged documents, which would require pressing criminal charges and months of investigation. The money was gone. I asked Kun Natia how common this was. She sighed and poured us both tea from the pot on her desk. Very common, she said. She'd seen dozens of cases like mine over the years. Foreign men, usually older, usually divorced or never married, coming to Thailand with savings and hope. Thai women, sometimes genuinely looking for love, sometimes looking for opportunity, sometimes a mix of both. Money changing hands under the guise of family emergencies. Relationships built on uneven foundations, where one person had far more to lose than the other. It rarely ended well for the foreign partner, but here's what she said that stuck with me. She said that not every Thai woman was like Lek, just like not every foreign man was a good person either. She'd seen Thai women genuinely victimized by abusive foreign husbands. She'd seen relationships that worked beautifully, built on real love and mutual respect. The problem was that when people came to a foreign country looking to fill a void in their lives, they often made decisions from a place of desperation rather than wisdom. And desperate decisions rarely led to good outcomes. I left her office feeling somehow better and worse at the same time. Better because at least someone understood what I was going through without judging me too harshly. Worse because I realized I'd become a statistic, just another cautionary tale about what happens when loneliness meets opportunity in a developing country. The divorce papers were filed in early November. By Thai law, there's a mandatory waiting period, time for both parties to reconsider and potentially reconcile. I wasn't reconsidering anything. I wanted out. I wanted to forget Lek existed. I wanted to go back in time and shake my past self, tell him to walk out of that art gallery and never look back. But time doesn't work that way, so all I could do was move forward. During those waiting weeks, Lek tried to contact me several times. Messages online that I didn't respond to. Calls that went straight to voicemail. She showed up at the house once, but I refused to open the door. I watched through the window as she stood there crying, pleading for me to give her another chance. Part of me wanted to open that door, wanted to hear what she had to say, wanted to believe that maybe there was some explanation I hadn't considered. But I knew better. I'd already heard her explanation, and it didn't change anything. She sent me a long message one night around 2 in the morning. I was still awake, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind churning through everything for the 1,000th time. Her message was in English, probably typed carefully with a translation app to make sure she said exactly what she wanted. She wrote that she was sorry, truly sorry for everything she'd done. She said she'd made terrible choices, that she'd been weak and foolish, that she'd let Somchai manipulate her into something she'd never intended. She claimed she'd actually fallen in love with me along the way, that our relationship had started as a lie, but had become real, at least for her. She said losing me was the worst thing that had ever happened to her, worse than any of the money problems or gambling debts. She begged me to believe that not everything between us had been fake. I read that message 3 times. I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to believe that at least some small part of what we'd had was real, but wanting something doesn't make it true. Even if she had developed real feelings for me, it didn't erase the lies, the stolen money, the calculated manipulation. You can't build anything lasting on that kind of foundation. The whole structure is rotten from the start. I blocked her number after that, changed my Line account, made it impossible for her to reach me. If she wanted to send divorce documents or legal correspondence, she could go through Kun Nataya, but I was done with direct contact, done with the emotional manipulation, done with giving her any more pieces of myself to destroy. December came. The divorce was finalized on the 18th. I signed the papers in Kun Nataya's office, officially ending what had barely lasted 2 years from start to finish. She asked if I was okay. I told her I would be. She handed me a business card for a therapist who specialized in helping expats deal with difficult experiences in Thailand. I took the card but never called. I'm not sure why. Pride maybe, or just the belief that I could handle this on my own. Looking back, I probably should have called. Christmas was brutal. I spent it alone in the San Sai house, drinking Chang beer and watching American movies on my laptop. My brother called from Vancouver to wish me Merry Christmas. I didn't tell him about the divorce yet. I wasn't ready to hear the "I told you so" that would inevitably follow. He'd never been thrilled about me moving to Thailand in the first place, thought I was making a mistake, thought I should stay closer to family. He'd probably feel validated now, and I wasn't strong enough to deal with that yet. New Year's Eve was worse. I could hear the neighbors celebrating, music and laughter drifting through the walls. I sat on my back patio with a bottle of whiskey I'd bought specifically for the occasion, watching fireworks light up the sky, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my entire life. At midnight, I made a resolution. I would stay in Thailand, but not here. Not in Chiang Mai, where every street corner reminded me of Lek. I'd move to Bangkok, start completely fresh, rebuild my life from scratch. If I was going to survive this, I needed a clean break. I gave notice to my landlord in early January. He was understanding, even offered to return part of the prepaid rent, but I told him to keep it. I didn't want anything that might connect me back to this chapter of my life. I packed my belongings into 4 suitcases and 3 cardboard boxes. Everything else, all the furniture and household items Lek and I had accumulated, I gave away to neighbors and local charities. I didn't want any of it. Every piece carried memories I needed to forget. The morning I left Chiang Mai, I took one last ride through the old city. Past the temples I'd visited with Lek, past the coffee shops where we'd sat for hours talking about nothing and everything, past the night bazaar where I'd first seen her in that art gallery. I thought it would be painful, this final tour of our life together, but it was actually liberating. With each familiar place I passed, I felt lighter. This wasn't my city anymore. These weren't my memories. They belonged to someone who didn't exist anymore. A naive version of me who'd believed in fairy tales and happy endings. Bangkok welcomed me with chaos and anonymity. Exactly what I needed. I found a small studio condo in Phrom Phong, one of those modern buildings filled with expats and wealthy Thais. The rent was 35,000 baht a month, more than I'd paid for an entire house in Chiang Mai, but I didn't care. I needed to be somewhere different, somewhere new, somewhere that didn't know anything about my past. The first few weeks were hard. I'd wake up in the morning in this unfamiliar room, take a moment to remember where I was and why I was there, then feel the weight of it all crash down again. Some mornings I didn't get out of bed until noon. I'd order food delivery, watch Netflix for hours, then fall asleep again just to escape being awake. I was depressed, clinically depressed, though I wouldn't have admitted it at the time. I told myself I just needed time to adjust, time to heal, time to move on. But healing isn't passive. You can't just wait for it to happen. You have to actively work at it. Around mid-February, I forced myself to start going outside. Nothing major, just walks around the neighborhood. Phrom Phong is one of those areas where you can spend hours walking and never run out of things to see. Street food vendors, high-end restaurants, shopping malls, parks, massage shops, everything mixed together in that uniquely Bangkok way. I'd walk for 2 or 3 hours every afternoon. No particular destination, just moving. Movement felt like progress, even if it wasn't taking me anywhere specific. One day I walked past a photography shop and saw a flyer for a beginner's photography class. It was being taught in English, met once a week, focused on street photography and capturing daily life in Bangkok. I'd always been interested in photography, but never had time to pursue it seriously. On impulse, I walked in and signed up. The class started the following week. That photography class saved me. I'm not being dramatic. It genuinely saved my life, or at least saved my sanity. The instructor was a British expat named Marcus, who'd been living in Bangkok for 15 years. He was in his 60s, spoke Thai fluently, and had this incredible eye for finding beauty in ordinary moments. There were 6 of us in the class, all foreigners, all dealing with our own reasons for being in Bangkok. We didn't share sob stories or get too personal. But there was an unspoken understanding among us. We were all here because we needed something to focus on, besides whatever had brought us to this point. We'd meet every Tuesday evening, spend an hour discussing technique and composition, then go out into the streets for 2 hours practicing what we'd learned. Marcus would give us assignments: photograph strangers without being intrusive, capture motion and stillness in the same frame, find patterns in chaos, document the daily rituals of Bangkok life. Each week I'd come back with dozens of photos, most of them terrible, a few of them decent. Marcus would review everyone's work, offering thoughtful critique and genuine encouragement. For the first time in months, I felt like I was learning something, growing in some direction, becoming someone new. Through the photography class, I met 2 people who became real friends. David, an Australian retiree who'd moved to Bangkok after his wife died of breast cancer, found solace in documenting the city's markets and temples. And Jin, a Korean woman in her 40s who worked remotely for a tech company in Seoul and had moved to Bangkok for a change of scenery after a difficult divorce. We bonded over our cameras and our complicated relationships with this city. We'd meet for lunch on weekends, explore different neighborhoods together, share our photos and stories. Neither David nor Jin pushed me to talk about what had happened, but gradually I opened up. It felt different telling them compared to telling my friends back in Canada. David and Jin understood the complexity of building a life in a foreign country, the loneliness that could drive you to make questionable decisions, the way desperation could override common sense. They'd both made their own mistakes along the way. David had lost money to a bad business investment with someone he'd trusted. Jin had dated a man who'd turned out to be married. We were all recovering from something, all trying to figure out how to live in Bangkok without repeating our past mistakes. By April, I was feeling almost normal again. Not happy exactly, but functional. I'd established a routine: morning coffee at the small cafe downstairs from my condo, lunch at different local restaurants, trying new dishes, expanding my Thai vocabulary through trial and error with patient servers, afternoons spent walking and photographing the city, evenings either attending the photography class or meeting David and Jin for dinner, weekends volunteering at an animal shelter in Bang Na that Jin had introduced me to. The shelter rescued street dogs and cats, got them medical treatment, and worked to find them homes. So I'd spend Saturday mornings walking dogs, cleaning kennels, helping with basic maintenance. The animals didn't judge me. They didn't care about my story. They just wanted attention and kindness, which I had plenty to give. The volunteer work was surprisingly therapeutic. These dogs had been abandoned, neglected, abused in some cases, but they still trusted humans. They still wagged their tails when you approached. They still believed in the possibility of love even after being hurt. I found that inspiring in a way I couldn't quite articulate. If these animals could move past their trauma, maybe I could too. Through the shelter, I met other volunteers, mostly expats, but also some local Thais who cared deeply about animal welfare. We'd chat while working, sharing updates about the dogs we'd bonded with, celebrating when one got adopted, mourning when one didn't make it. There was this sense of community I'd been missing, a feeling of being part of something larger than myself and my problems. One of the Thai volunteers, a woman named Porn, probably late 50s, reminded me a bit of Kun Nataya. She had that same direct but kind energy. She'd been volunteering at the shelter for over a decade, had personally rescued hundreds of dogs from the streets. One Saturday, while we were both sitting in the shade taking a break from the morning heat, she asked me why I'd come to Thailand. Not in a judgmental way, just genuinely curious. I told her the short version. Wanted to retire somewhere warm. Fell in love with Thailand on previous visits. Made some mistakes. Ended up staying anyway. She nodded, didn't press for details. Then she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Thailand is like a mirror. It shows you who you really are. Some people don't like what they see, so they leave. Some people see themselves clearly for the first time and decide to stay. The country itself doesn't change who you are. It just reveals it." I thought about that for days afterward. Was she right? Had Thailand revealed something about me I hadn't known before? My capacity for foolishness, certainly. My desperate need for connection. My willingness to ignore obvious warning signs when I wanted something badly enough. But maybe it had also revealed some strengths. My resilience, my ability to start over, My refusal to let one terrible experience define the rest of my life. Summer came. Bangkok's heat was oppressive, the kind that makes you sweat just standing still. But I was adjusting, learning which times of day to stay inside, which times to venture out, learning to move slower, dress lighter, drink more water, learning to be patient with myself and this city. I'd been in Bangkok for 6 months, 6 months of rebuilding, 6 months of intentionally not dating, not putting myself in any situation where I might be vulnerable again. I'd see attractive women sometimes, make eye contact, maybe exchange a smile, but I never took it further. I wasn't ready. Maybe I'd never be ready. That thought didn't scare me as much as it probably should have. Marcus, my photography instructor, invited me to join an exhibition he was organizing. Local photographers showcasing their Bangkok work in a gallery in Thonglor. I was hesitant. My photography wasn't that good, but Marcus insisted. He said the point wasn't perfection, it was participation, community, sharing your perspective with others. So I agreed. I spent 2 weeks selecting and editing 20 photos for the exhibition. Street scenes mostly. A vendor grilling satay at dusk, smoke rising into orange light. An elderly couple holding hands while waiting for the BTS. A child feeding pigeons in Lumpini Park. A monk's reflection in a puddle. Simple moments that had caught my eye. Fragments of Bangkok life that felt honest and unfiltered. The exhibition opening was on a Friday evening in July. I was nervous, felt exposed showing my work to strangers. But the turnout was good. Maybe 40 or 50 people wandering through the gallery, sipping wine, discussing the photographs. Several people stopped to look at my series, made positive comments. One woman, probably in her 30s, Thai but speaking perfect English, stood in front of my photo of the elderly couple for a long time. When she finally moved on, she caught my eye and smiled. "Beautiful work," she said. "You capture love well." I thanked her, felt my face flush with embarrassment and something else. Not attraction exactly, but recognition. Recognition that I was still capable of creating something meaningful. Recognition that life was continuing despite everything. Recognition that maybe eventually I'd be okay. The exhibition ran for 2 weeks. I went back 3 times, just to see people's reactions to everyone's work. It felt good being part of something creative, something positive. Marcus told me I should keep pursuing photography seriously, maybe even try to sell some prints online. I wasn't sure about that, but I appreciated the encouragement. By August, I'd been in Bangkok for almost 8 months. I'd more or less stopped thinking about Lek every day. She'd pop into my mind occasionally, usually triggered by something random. A song that had been playing during one of our trips. The smell of jasmine rice being cooked. The sight of a couple holding hands on the street. But when she did appear in my thoughts, it no longer felt like a knife twisting in my gut. It felt more like a dull ache, manageable, something I could acknowledge and then move past. I'd also stopped checking her social media. I'd blocked her profiles months ago, but for a while I'd been tempted to create fake accounts just to see what she was doing, whether she was still with Somchai, whether she seemed happy or miserable. But I'd resisted. Whatever she was doing, it wasn't my business anymore. Her life and mine had diverged, and dwelling on her path would only poison my own. David invited me to join him on a trip to Koh Lanta in September. Just a guy's weekend, he said. Some beach time, good food, maybe rent scooters and explore the island. I'd been hesitant about traveling since everything with Lek, but I agreed. It felt like a test. Could I enjoy Thailand again? Could I make new memories that weren't tainted by the old ones? Koh Lanta was exactly what I needed. Clean beaches, clear water, laid-back vibe. David and I stayed in a small bungalow resort on the west coast, spent our days swimming and reading, our evenings at beachfront restaurants eating fresh seafood and watching the sunset. We talked about life, relationships, regrets, hopes. David told me more about his wife, how they'd been married for 36 years before she died, how he'd thought he'd want to die too after losing her. But then he'd realized she'd want him to keep living, to find joy again, to not waste whatever time he had left. So he'd moved to Bangkok, started the photography class, forced himself to embrace this new chapter even though it felt wrong at first. I told David I admired his strength. He laughed and said it wasn't strength, it was just stubbornness. Refusing to let grief win. Refusing to give up on life just because life had been cruel. The world doesn't owe us happiness, he said, but we owe it to ourselves to try and find it anyway. That trip to Koh Lanta marked a turning point. I came back to Bangkok feeling lighter, more hopeful, more convinced that I'd made the right choice by staying. Thailand hadn't ruined me. Lek had tried, but she'd failed. I was still here, still breathing, still capable of enjoying a sunset or a good meal or a conversation with a friend. That was enough. September turned into October. I celebrated my 54th birthday quietly. David and Jin took me to dinner at a nice Italian restaurant in Sukhumvit. They gave me a book about famous street photographers and a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue. It was simple, understated, perfect. After dinner, we walked through the night market at Asiatique, talked about nothing important, just enjoyed being together. Later that night, alone in my condo, I thought about where I'd been a year ago. Still married to Lek, still living in that house in Sansai, still sending money to pay off gambling debts I didn't know about, still believing in a future that was never going to happen. The contrast was jarring. A year ago I'd thought I had everything figured out. Now I was divorced, living alone, significantly poorer, but somehow more content than I'd been in that illusory happiness. Maybe that's what wisdom is, understanding that comfortable lies feel better than uncomfortable truths, but only one of them allows you to actually live. I started dating again in November. Not seriously, just casual coffee dates arranged through friends of friends. Testing the waters, seeing if I was capable of trusting someone again. The first few dates were awkward. I was too guarded, too suspicious, analyzing every word and gesture for signs of deception. But gradually I relaxed. Most of these women were just normal people looking for connection, not con artists looking for victims. I didn't fall in love with any of them. Didn't even make it past a second or third date with most, but that was okay. I was relearning how to be around someone without panicking, without waiting for the other shoe to drop. There was one woman, an expat from Germany named Anna, who I saw for about 6 weeks. She was 50, worked for an NGO focused on education in rural Thailand, had been in Bangkok for 5 years. We had good conversations, enjoyed each other's company, even slept together a few times. But we both knew it wasn't going anywhere long term. We wanted different things. She was planning to return to Germany within the year. I was committed to staying in Thailand. We parted as friends, agreed to stay in touch, and actually did. By the time December rolled around again, marking a full year since my divorce, I was in a completely different place emotionally. I'd rebuilt a life in Bangkok that felt authentic and sustainable. I had friends, routines, hobbies, purpose. I volunteered regularly at the animal shelter, attended photography meetups, explored new neighborhoods every week. I'd even started learning Thai more seriously, taking classes twice a week with a tutor. My Thai was still basic, but I could handle simple conversations, order food without pointing at pictures, ask for directions. I spent Christmas with David, Jin, and a few other people from our photography circle. We did a gift exchange, cooked a potluck dinner together, watched Die Hard because apparently that's a Christmas movie. It was warm and chaotic, and nothing like the lonely Christmas I'd had the year before. When everyone left around midnight, I cleaned up the apartment, opened a beer, and sat on my balcony, looking out at the Bangkok skyline. The city was alive with lights and sound, millions of people living their lives, each with their own struggles and triumphs. I was just one of them, just another person trying to figure it out. That realization felt freeing. New Year's Eve was better too. I went to a rooftop party that Marcus organized, watched fireworks explode over the city, toasted with strangers who felt like friends. At midnight, instead of making a resolution, I just felt grateful. Grateful I'd survived, grateful I'd stayed, grateful for this messy, complicated, beautiful city that had given me a second chance. Looking back now, 2 years after everything fell apart with Lek, I can see the arc of my story differently. Yes, I lost money. Yes, I was betrayed. Yes, I made stupid decisions driven by loneliness and hope. But I also survived. I rebuilt. I found a way to live that feels more genuine than the life I'd imagined with her. I'm not bitter anymore, not consumed by anger or regret. I'm just here living in Bangkok, taking photos, volunteering with dogs, having dinner with friends, learning a new language, experiencing new things. Is this the retirement I planned? No, it's better because it's real. Built on truth instead of lies. Built on self-reliance instead of codependency. Built on acceptance instead of fantasy. Do I trust easily anymore? Absolutely not. Do I believe in happily ever after? Not really. Do I think I'll ever remarry? Doubtful. But I'm okay with all of that. I'd rather be alone and honest than coupled and deceived. I'd rather know where I stand, even if I'm standing by myself. Thailand showed me who I am. Someone capable of deep foolishness, yes, but also someone capable of resilience, of starting over, of finding meaning in small moments. Someone who can survive betrayal and come out stronger on the other side. The mirror didn't lie. It showed me everything, the good and the bad. And I'm still here, looking back at my reflection, accepting all of it. That's enough. That has to be enough, because it's all I've got. And sometimes all you've got is exactly what you need.